The storm broke before the clouds ever gathered. It began the day she stepped out of her car and onto the pavement of Westbridge Secondary School, her heels clicking with a rhythm that silenced even the usual morning chatter. Dr. Aaliyah Monroe had arrived with a reputation for turning broken schools into thriving sanctuaries, but no one expected her to carry herself with such quiet strength, such presence, such calm command. Some students admired her instantly. Others felt threatened. And one student, the one everyone whispered about, the one no teacher had ever managed to redirect, decided that her arrival meant a challenge. But as she crossed the courtyard, unaware of the storm brewing behind her, no one imagined that by the end of the week she would change the entire spirit of the school, that she would confront cruelty not with anger but with something far more powerful, and that she would leave thousands speechless with her next move. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of standing up for what's right, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps us keep bringing real, moving stories like this to life. It started on a gray Monday, when the wind carried a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Dr. Monroe walked through the halls with an elegance that made the fluorescent lights seem softer. She noticed everything: the peeling paint, the defeated posture of exhausted teachers, the students who walked with shoulders hunched, used to being overlooked. She had come from a district where schools had been underfunded for decades, where she had fought for every program, every student, every spark of hope. But this transfer was different. Westbridge had resources. It had opportunity. What it lacked was heart, and from her very first steps, she felt the emptiness that dollars could never fill. Students barely looked up. Teachers avoided meeting each other's eyes. A strange heaviness clung to the air. Yet she breathed it in calmly, already planning how to rebuild what was broken. But there was one person who wanted nothing rebuilt. His name was Tanner Wells, a 17-year-old senior with a reputation that spread faster than rumors. He was tall, strong, loud, and carried the kind of teenage confidence that came from getting away with too much for too long. Teachers feared him. Students followed him. The administration ignored him. His father, a wealthy donor, ensured that he never faced consequences. Tanner saw himself as untouchable, and when he watched Dr. Monroe step onto campus with her head held high, he felt something he didn't like: a shift of power. A week passed, and Dr. Monroe wasted no time. She visited classrooms unannounced, met with faculty members individually, listened to student concerns with sincerity, and walked the hallways like she was learning the heartbeat of the school. Her presence unsettled Tanner. She stood out not only because she was new, not only because she was a woman in a leadership role traditionally dominated by men, and not only because she was black in a community with little diversity, but because she was unshakable. She carried grace that felt like a challenge to him, as if she could see through all the bravado he used to hide his own turmoil. Tanner didn't realize that one of Aaliyah's greatest strengths was noticing the pain people masked, the wounds they denied, the storms they carried within them. But he mistook her empathy for weakness. The first incident came quietly. Aaliyah was walking to the cafeteria when she noticed a group of ninth graders flinching as Tanner shoved his way past them. She approached him with a calm presence, the kind that demanded respect without a single raised word. Tanner looked her over, smirked, and walked away without acknowledging her. She didn't chase. She didn't lecture. She simply observed him with eyes that saw far more than he expected. And that shook him. No adult had ever looked at him that way, as if they weren't afraid of him, as if he wasn't the biggest presence in the room. That silent challenge was enough for Tanner to decide he needed to make a statement. 2 days later, on a windy afternoon, the incident happened. Students crowded around the courtyard during lunch hour when Tanner approached her with a swagger that drew attention. He mocked her changes, questioned her decisions, and made comments loud enough to echo across the courtyard. When she didn't react the way he hoped, didn't shrink, didn't snap, didn't argue, he grew more aggressive, stepping into her space. Some students gasped. Others pulled out phones. Tanner shoved her shoulder, not hard enough to truly harm her, but hard enough to humiliate her publicly. The moment froze in time. A hush fell over the crowd. And then Aaliyah did something no one expected. She didn't yell. She didn't send him to the office. She didn't call security. She simply steadied herself, inhaled slowly, and looked at him directly, eyes calm, voice steady, presence unbreakable. That moment, her refusal to retaliate, was more powerful than any punishment she could have given. Tanner felt something strange wash over him. Not fear. Not guilt. But confusion. Why wasn't she reacting the way everyone else always did? Why wasn't she giving him the power he wanted? Word spread fast. Teachers whispered. Students replayed the video clips. Some mocked Dr. Monroe for not standing up for herself. Others admired her restraint. But only Aaliyah knew the truth. She saw something broken in Tanner, something deeper than the outburst, something she had seen in other students who masked fear with aggression. She wasn't excusing his actions. She was preparing for something bigger. The next morning, she arrived early and requested a meeting with Tanner's father. She had no intention of requesting punishment. Instead, she asked a simple question that unsettled him: "How is your son doing, truly?" His father, usually dismissive, found himself unable to answer. Work had consumed him for years. Tanner's academic struggles, disappearing friends, anger issues, none of it had been addressed. For the first time, the father listened as someone who wasn't angry with Tanner, who wasn't afraid of him, spoke truth about the boy he had been too busy to guide. But the real turning point came at the next school assembly. Students filled the auditorium, buzzing with anticipation. Rumors had spread that Dr. Monroe would announce Tanner's expulsion. Some expected a fiery speech. Others expected silence. Instead, she walked onto the stage with a folder in her hand and a determined, steady grace. Without ever mentioning his name, she told the story of a young man she had once known, a student who pushed people away, acted out in anger, and seemed unstoppable until one teacher refused to give up on him. She spoke of how compassion had saved him, how accountability paired with understanding had transformed him, how society often punished broken children instead of healing them. The auditorium grew still. Tanner, seated in the back, stared at the ground. No one knew she was speaking about him, not yet. Then she did something braver than punishment. She announced a new student leadership program dedicated to rebuilding school culture, teaching emotional intelligence, and mentoring younger students. But the shock came when she declared that the program would be led by students who had struggled the most, not the straight-A achievers, not the natural leaders, but the ones who knew what it meant to be misunderstood. Students who had made mistakes but wanted to grow. Students who needed a second chance. The silence was heavy. Everyone wondered who she had in mind. Then her eyes drifted to Tanner, not harsh, not accusing, but inviting. It was as if the entire auditorium turned to see his reaction. Something inside him cracked that day. Shame, confusion, anger, longing, all collided into a single moment. No one had ever believed he could lead anything. No one had ever invited him to be better. No one had ever seen potential where others saw danger. Tanner left that assembly with a weight in his chest he didn't know how to describe. In the days that followed, he began showing up differently. He apologized quietly to the ninth graders he had pushed. He started attending the leadership meetings, sitting in the back at first, then gradually stepping forward. He helped plan events, volunteered to mentor younger students, and began opening up about the pressure he felt to be strong, to be unbreakable, to be the person everyone expected him to be. Dr. Monroe never highlighted his transformation publicly. She never used him as an example. She simply guided him with steady, patient encouragement, celebrating every small step. The school began to change around him. Tension among students eased. Teachers felt supported. New programs blossomed. The courtyard, once a battleground of social hierarchy, became a place of collaboration and creativity.